Hello everybody, Floppy Waffles 69 here and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be featuring the Tier 8 Premium Pan-Asian Light Cruiser, the Irian. I believe this ship's actual nation is Indonesia. Obviously it was originating from the Soviet Union because at first glance you would not be mistaken if you said, hey, that looks like a Mikhail Kutuzov or a Pozharsky, because you would be 100% correct. It is identical to those two ships in regards of the hull. But there are some subtle changes that Wargaming has done to the Irian. And I'm going to be going over all those subtle changes and actually why I believe this is a great Tier 8 premium light cruiser, and one that I find myself gravitating to more so to play at Tier 8 than other, especially the tech line ship, which I believe is the Harbin. I much rather prefer to play the Irian, as I believe it's a more engaging experience, and I feel like I actually have more game impact with this particular vessel. It's just, in my opinion, my playstyle fits me a little bit better more. But anyways, I digress. Let's go in and talk more about the Irian. So the reason I'm covering all these Pan-Asian ships, obviously as of late, is because of the Lunar New Year. We are celebrating here in World of Warships, and I believe we have like 2 to 3 more weeks of this current update, and then Wargaming will go ahead and release update 15.2. I believe it would be ending the Lunar New Year celebration, and we're moving onward into the year. Another reason why is because if you purchase the 2 containers here, if we go to the armory, and we go ahead and go to the Neon Paradox, and you pick up either Defenders of Order or the Adherents of Chaos, you will see that all the ships you can purchase, yes, well, not purchase, but obtain, you have a lot of these like themed ships, which are just copy pastes of other ships, but you actually get these Pan-Asian ships featured in there as well. And there are some good ones that are scattered in there, like the Incheon, the Tanyan, and obviously here is another one being the Irian. We cover the Huan He, or whatever the fuck you call it, in the last video, so I went ahead and moved right on over to the right, and we're going to be focusing here on the Irian. Now let's go back to port here. So yeah, the Irian, guys, basically what is this ship in a nutshell? Basically what this ship is a Mikhail Kutuzov that has dropped the smoke screen and instead has picked up a torpedo reload booster to fall more in line with that of the Pan-Asian formula or tech tree flavor, essentially. The Irian does have a single YY torpedo launcher on either broadside that does travel 13.5 kilometers. So then go ahead, launch your torpedoes on either side, and you can go ahead and pop that torpedo reload booster and send another rack down range. This is nice too if you don't want to flip around, because it does take some time. You can send one rack down range, reload boost it, and then pop another rack. Essentially, you're launching a YY torpedo salvo at an enemy. That is essentially what this thing is and kind of what its gimmick is. Other than that, the DPM of the HE and the DPM of the AP are identical to that of the Mikhail Kutuzov. AP coming in at 297,000 and the high explosive coming in at 198,000, which is actually not that bad and is pretty respectable for this tier. I really do like the package here, guys. It is a very, very fun premium. But like we always do with this, with these ship reviews, I'm going to go ahead and look at the armor layout first, go all down the soft stats, talk a little bit about her, show off the upgrades I'm slotted, the commander build, and then go ahead and show you some gameplay in her. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to say about the Irian is that, yes, this ship may be in the loot containers this particular patch, celebrating this particular Lunar New Year. I would go ahead and recommend that you don't buy the Lunar New Year crates. I'm not a big fan of gambling, though I have taken part in gambling events in the past. Obviously, I understand, people do. It's not a big deal. All I say is set a limit and then stick to your word and leave, and don't exceed that limit. Kind of like going to a casino, make sure you leave your credit card at home or up in the hotel room, and just bring the money down with you. It's one of those things that, you know, sometimes the thrill of the hunt, so to speak, kind of sucks in a lot of people. And it is kind of predatory, and that is what gambling is. So just please be careful if you are going to be taking part in the Lunar New Year event. But other than that, I would say just flat out purchase the ship in the premium store. I know this ship is in the rotations in the premium store, so if it's not in there right now, it will probably be in next iteration or next rotation. So just wait until then. I believe a tier 8 premium runs you around 11,300 if I'm not mistaken, which isn't that bad of a deal, especially when you throw on the 25% coupon on top of that. And this is a ship that I actually wouldn't mind recommending to you guys to pick up. I actually think it's a really good bargain. Hell, if you could go ahead and get the Kutuzov, I would recommend picking that up. But again, that ship is locked behind Santa crates and loot containers, so it's kind of iffy. You're probably not going to get it, okay? But if you want a Mikhail Kutuzov kind of substitution, that you want kind of the similar kind of hull, then the Irian is the choice for me. Now, I previously already mentioned I covered the Pozharsky about a month ago. Personally, not a big fan of that ship, as I think AP only really limits it, and it's not any improved armor piercing either, like no short fused, no increased or improved ricochet angles. It's just flat out AP, and I think it really tends to struggle, especially when, you know, at tier 8, and especially if it gets into higher tier games as lower tier, like tier 10 games, it really struggles to find a place, right? Even though it does come with the short burst smoke generator, which does increase its survivability, the Irian here doesn't have that. All it has is the torpedo reload booster and the hydroacoustic surge. So again, you're going to have to change your play style when you choose to play this particular ship compared to the other two. Now, let's get into the armor layout. With that all set aside, 25mm nose, 25mm ass, you're picking up a 27mm deck with a 25mm upper belt. Now, what does this scream, guys? This screams overmatch machine. This thing will absolutely be overmatched almost everywhere on its ship compared to the battleships, or basically because the battleships are going to be seeing at this tier and or higher are having those 380mm guns, 406mm guns, and larger. So basically, you will be overmatched to shit. Looking at the Citadel, which is quite long and sits decently high above the waterline, you will get Citadel too, so you have to tread with caution and protect your broadside and make sure you know where the enemy threats are. Your armor scheme is not the best. The only saving grace that I find when I play these particular vessels, that is the Pozharsky, the Irian, and the Kutuzov, the hull in itself, I don't know if it's the angles or if it's just the whole shape or whatever it may be, I actually find them to be reasonably sturdy and tanky. I don't want to use the word tanky because that might set the wrong precedence, because it's most certainly not. I just find myself eating a lot of overpens from time to time again, and maybe you find that out too. If you don't, hey, fuck, you probably should be more like you. I probably should be more like you, and because I should be eating more Citadels than I do, I do find that I eat a lot of overpens with this particular vessel. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. If you find, you know, something similar to what I find, or if you're like Waffle, you're absolutely mental. Okay. Moving into the survivability, 41,200, actually not that bad. I believe if we're comparing it head to head to like that of the Kutuzov, you actually pick up about 1,000 or so more HP. Again, so marginal, maybe a single HE salvo more of damage you can take. Again, you don't have a smoke screen, so again, maybe that's why the devs wanted to give you a little bit more HP. I don't know. It's so minuscule, guys. You're probably not going to notice it. Moving into the artillery, which is going to be the bread and butter of your cruiser. This is the 4x3 152mm guns. You are picking up 12 152mm guns, reloading in 8 seconds with a 180-degree turn time of 25 seconds with a maximum range of 17.5 kilometers. Very nice package here. Again, this isn't the ludicrous 19.1 kilometer range that the Mikhail Kutuzov has. We all know that is a little bit nutty and cracked. Definitely a ship from a different era. But in my opinion, 17.5 is more than usable, especially with the way you want to be playing this ship anyways. This is a kiting HE farmer / spammer. That is how you want to play this ship. Definitely at the medium to longer ranges, I think a sweet spot for this ship is anywhere between 14 kilometers and higher. Again, I always want to keep a side note, just because you have 17.5 kilometers of main battery firing range doesn't mean you need to be sitting at 17.5 kilometers to, you know, make sure you're filling that gap and utilizing all of your maximum main battery firing range. Your DPM theoretically will be better the closer you are to the target, and more effective DPM will be better because you're more effectively landing more shells on target than you would be, at closer ranges than you would be at further ranges. That's just a given, okay? Going into the high explosive shells, 2200 maximum damage with a 12% fire chance. That can obviously be supplemented with Demo Expert giving up to 13 and the 2 signal flags, which can go up to 14. 14 actually is not bad on this ship, as it is translating to about 10.8 fires a minute, which again, with the signal flags plus Demo Expert, you're probably pushing more like 11 to 12. Very nice. I find myself setting a lot of fires with this thing. I think I maxed out with the game. I think 16 fires I've had on this thing at one time. This thing is a bit of a flamethrower, and again, so do all the Kutuzov class. The Mikhail and the Irian both set a lot of fires. Kind of a bane of battleships, if I'm being honest with you guys. Armor penetration capacity is 30 millimeters, which is actually quite nice. I really do like this value. You will find yourself not only doing damage with these guns, but also setting a lot of fires, which is very nice. Again, because you're right there, there is a bit of an argument to be made that, hey, maybe inertia fused high explosive, this is viable on this ship. And it is. It very much is. And I would actually recommend you guys to give it a go and try it out. Because it's only going to slash you down in half. So you're going to be packing around 6 to 8% fire chance with inertia fused high explosive on there. And on an 8-second reload, that's really not that bad. Again, it's going to come down to what you think is better for your ship. Do you think sitting there spamming, the 1 key HE all game and not only doing damage that way and, supplementing every now and then with a fire is the way to go? Or do you want to switch between your 1 and 2 key and kind of min-max your ammunition choices? Obviously, the armor piercing, as we're going to be going into that right now, isn't that bad either at 3,300 maximum damage with an initial velocity of 950 meters, which matches that of your high explosive. It is worth talking about the armor piercing. Fuse time of 0.025 seconds. Overmatch penetration or overmatch capacity of 10 millimeters. Standard ricochet angles of 45 to 60. I find the penetration actually to be not that bad. Again, when you're going to want to be switching to that armor piercing is around that sub 12 kilometer range. Again, you're packing around 120 millimeters. At the end of the day, guys, you don't have much pen because you only have 152 millimeter guns, but you do have 12 of them, which kind of makes up for that. But as long as you're chunking and get flat broadsides, you will be able to see a lot of damage come from your armor piercing. So no matter what, even if you're running IFHE, you should be supplementing with armor piercing regardless, because it's just going to be a little bit more of a consistent ammunition choice to be using in regards of dealing the maximum amount of damage possible when you have broadsides at your disposal. Again, I don't really want to talk too much about the secondary battery. You have them. These are like these 100 millimeter Grozavoy looking turrets. You have them. They're going to start the supplemental or occasional fire. Again, their range isn't that good at 6.9. Don't rely on them. They're a cruiser, and they're secondaries on a light cruiser. Okay? End of discussion. Moving on swiftly to the torpedoes. 2x5 533 millimeter torpedoes. These, like I said, these are YY torpedoes traveling at 13.5 kilometers, 17,900 maximum damage with a 69 knot top speed and a detectability range of 0.8 kilometers. These are deep water torpedoes, meaning they can only hit cruisers, battleships, and aircraft carriers. The reaction time on these torps is 4.3 seconds, which is very, very nice. And the flood chance is astronomical as they're deep water torpedoes at 368%. All in all, guys, these torpedoes are very nice, but the only problem with this ship is it depends on how you want to build her. Personally, for me, I don't believe in going double conceal on my Irian. I think this ship is better if you run double, you run the I'll talk about it later, but run the in the 5th slot the rudder shift mod, and in the 4th slot you run prop mod. I think it's really gonna allow this ship to elevate its play, or run double rudder is very nice as well, especially if you want to stay more constantly going. You don't want to start and stop an engine juke a whole lot. You want to basically turn in and cut your speed, or turn out and cut your speed when you're actively maneuvering and dodging incoming salvos. I find this ship to be very good at doing that, especially at longer ranges, and it can be quite frustrating to deal with, especially when you're in a battleship reloading every 30 seconds and this thing's setting you ablaze constantly. Moving into the AA defense. Actually, the AA defense suite on this particular vessel is quite nice, coming in at a continuous damage value of 270, flak value or damage by shell explosions at 1400. Again, you have different values. You have a 5.8 kilometer range of 144 and a 3.5 at 259. Definitely that medium range AA is going to be quite nice. Again, your 100 millimeter guns act as like those dual purpose secondary mounts, which are, again, very, very nice. This thing actually does shoot down a fair amount of aircraft. The only problem with this particular ship is you cannot take defensive AA fire consumable. So unlike the Mikhail Kutuzov that has the option to slot hydro and defensive AA, you're only locked into using your hydroacoustic search, which in my opinion kind of sucks for the Irian. And usually I know a lot of people bitch about defensive AA, and I'm right there with people. But again, we can't deny it does do and add some more damage, and it makes your flak count and all that go up a little bit and make it a little bit harder to deal with in regards to the AA, of the ship, right? Especially when you're in an aircraft carrier, stuff like that. It kind of sucks because I think the Mikhail Kutuzov auto should be running the hydroacoustic search because you have a standardized smoke screen and you're most likely going to be playing in and out of your smoke and around it. The Irian really doesn't make much use of its hydroacoustic search that often, especially with where you want to be playing more to that medium to longer range. So I could see why I would want to potentially have defensive AA more so than my hydroacoustic search. Again, I think I'm still going to have to recommend the hydro no matter what. Again, you're locked in taking it anyways, so it's kind of a no-brainer. Hydro is just going to be more applicable to more games and more scenarios than defensive AA is, but I wish that they would add the option for us to either take defensive AA or hydro on the ship. I don't know, maybe it's the part of me that just wants more balance in the game or more variety, but yeah, that's kind of one thing that I've always wished on my Irian that I had at my disposal. Moving into the maneuverability on the ship. Again, these stats are going to be a little bit different because I've taken various upgrades, but my stats, maximum speed, are 32.7 knots, which is not bad. Turning circle radius of 760 meters, and a rudder shift time of 4.9 seconds, which is actually very, very nice. Again, the concealment is going to be altered as well. I think your base concealment on this ship is 14.06. Again, you slot the concealment mod, and that's going to make it come down even more. And then it's going to be around 13 with the concealment. It's going to be like what, 10 or 11 point something with the concealment on the commander. Look at the upgrades of the ship. So as you can see, I actually do recommend taking the double rudder shift mod. I've played this thing with the prop mod and rudder mod. I've played this thing with the concealment and prop concealment and rudder. And to me, I think the most amount of game impact I have in my Irian is when I'm running double rudder. I think to have a 4.9 second rudder shift time is actually exquisite, and I think it allows you to dodge a lot of incoming shells. As you know, the Irian doesn't have anything at its disposal to increase its survivability other than you as the commander, so you're going to have to utilize islands, allied smoke screens, and obviously your WASD keys to dodge. And I think this is going to give you the best option to do so because you can't rely on the armor scheme of the Irian. It's just way too squishy and way too weak to shrug off a lot of shells, right? The armor is really going to be good against other cruisers and destroyers, dealing with enemy battleships. Say la vie, essentially, because it's going to be going right into your citadel and right through that armor and penetrating you completely, and eventually a couple shots and you're dead and you're out of game. It's one of those things I just highly recommend trying the double rudder shift mod and seeing if you can make this work, because I can make it work with ease, and I think it's a very fun and interactive playstyle. It kind of really elevates the Irian to a level that I would highly recommend this ship to a lot of players. So definitely check that out. Going into the commander build now, and as you can see, I don't have a 21-point commander. This is actually what I have, but if you want to know what I'm going to be taking on my Irian, this is what I'm going to be taking on my Irian. Obviously, I have Grease the Gears, Demo, Adrenaline Rush, Concealment, Top Grade Gunner. I am going to be picking up Outnumbered. I am going to be picking up Focus Firing Training, and I am going to be picking up Incoming Fire Alert as my 21-point skill. I thought about dropping Incoming Fire Alert and picking up Last Stand. As you can see, actually wouldn't be that bad of a deal given the way, you know, be given the way I play this ship. For me, though, I want to know when enemies fire at me so I can actively maneuver. I have pretty good situational awareness for the vast majority of the time, so I know when the enemy is going to be targeting me, and I want to just make sure I get an extra warning when an incoming salvo is on its way to come get me, right? So this is the commander build that I highly recommend you do. Again, I don't have this one, so I can't like say, ooh, the end all be all, definitely pick up outnumbered. You know, my reasoning for this is I want to make sure that I have more of my shells landing on target more often, essentially, is what I'm doing. And yes, I'm usually not a fan of this skill. I usually don't want to put myself in bad situations, but I'm actually finding myself getting a lot of use out of this skill on more and more ships. And I actually find myself taking this on more and more ships. Now, it's kind of one of those skills that I was wrong about when the commander rework happened and I originally never took on anything. I thought it was an absolute hogwash skill. Now, I'm starting to get my mind changed about it, and I actually would rather recommend it on this ship. If you're not going to take outnumbered, I actually highly recommend you going with the inertia fuse high explosive shells to give it a go and try it out. I definitely think it's worth it to give it a go and try it out and see if you actually have higher damage games because of it. As you know, the one skill I'm not taking on this thing is Superintendent. For me, I never run through all my charges of Torpedo Reload Booster on this thing, so getting a 4th charge to me really isn't like, ooh, I really need that. The Hydro, yeah, I could see that. I maybe will go through it for the entire game, you know, 3 charges. But again, having that additional charge of either consumable, in most situations, I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate that. For me, I never find myself running through all my consumables anyway, so I'm not going to recommend this skill just for that reason alone. And again, to bolster a little bit of the AA, to kind of make this thing go a little bit better, as you can see, if you do take this skill, you are getting better sector reinforce time, which is quite nice. And you're going to be getting a number of a flak explosion from 6 to 7, which again is super nice because that's your main damage dealer. Again, good CV players will dodge this, but again, adding an additional flak charge up in the air gives them one more thing to worry about when they're dodging, especially when you're combining your AA with various other allies, which again, you most likely will be anyways. All right. So anyways, guys, that is the Irian in a nutshell. I don't want to waste any more time talking about her in port. Let's go ahead and check her out in battle, guys. Okay, and here we are in battle in the Irian. Here is the commander build and the upgrades that I have taken on this ship. Obviously, the commander build I already mentioned. I only have a 16-point commander, but that is the commander build that I will be taking on this ship. And yeah, guys, sit back and relax, and hopefully you enjoy this display of what the Irian can do. Obviously, we are top tier in this game. I believe this is all tier. Is it tier 7, tier 8? I can't see because the way the fucking thing is set up. But anyways, I digress. The Irian, guys. This is why I love this ship. This game right here, okay, is a prime example. If the scenario presents itself where enemies push into you, and you happen to kite out, that is what I like to call the element of the ship. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I've mentioned this in various other reviews on my channel. Every ship has an element in which it is the ideal situation for the ship, like kind of like its sweet spot, so to speak. And a lot of cruisers, not all, but a lot of cruisers' element in this game is in the pre-kited position where they can HE spam and use their turret firing angles to their advantage, increase the armor threshold of their hull, and decrease the likelihood of them getting and taking massive amounts of damage in return. And that is what the Irian does very, very well. I know I didn't show the turret firing angles in the port analysis. Usually I do that, but obviously you're going to have to take my word for it that they are quite good. And you're going to see examples of the turret traverse or the turret angles in this game here in the background footage. Now, obviously, this is a little bit different of a scenario. We have no destroyer on this flank, so guess who becomes the destroyer? This guy. The Irian is not a frontline cruiser by any means, so I had to play this pretty passive, and it was very nice that the enemy Algeret already went into the cap, so I knew kind of where he was, so I could already pre-kite out. Obviously, there's a good example of the armor scheme. Semi-armor piercing and this thing just don't jive very well. I mean, of course, if you are the one shooting the semi-armor piercing at my 25mm armored hull, yeah, you're going to get some good results, as that Amalfi just figured out the easy way, essentially. Just point and click my ship and 11,000 damage. There it is. kind of, I know I just finished the semi-armor piercing, battleship line, the Italian BB line, on my Down the Line series. So you already know how I feel about the semi-armor piercing ammunition, choice or type. Anyways, I digress. I remember before I digress, I remember when the high explosive used to be the thing that everyone hated. Oh, the fires, we got to nerf high explosive. Like, look, I understand the frustration, but at the end of the day, like, for game balancing purposes, I mean, what do you want? Like, at the end of the day, you have to do something, right? And which I think is a big change and deviation for why a lot of players left World of Tanks back in the day. There were times that your ammunition, you could physically not do anything to some tanks. And again, where I like if I can't do anything, then my allies can, I have to support them. I understand for simplicity's sake why wargaming went in kind of this general direction, which ultimately they're not going to change it, so there's really no sense in continuing to talk about it. So the Irian, a damage farmer at its finest, an HE spammer at its finest. It's what it does, right? This is what it does. At longer ranges where the ship is in its element in the pre-cutted position, obviously here I have turned in because I want to make sure I have all these targets in my sights and within my range, and I want to make sure I'm supporting my allied battleship as well. He has kind of put the brick on the gas and is kind of just full sending it, which again isn't necessarily a bad choice. The only thing I wish is that he kind of had the anticipation that these cruisers are launching torpedoes, most likely on the gray indicator line, so if he adjusted his speed ever so slightly, he would have thrown them off completely. Of course, he doesn't do that, and he does take some torpedoes, which does affect him to some degree, and ultimately, which gets him killed. I thought for sure he was going to take out this North Carolina, especially here in about a minute when the North Carolina decides to go flat broadside of the guy, but then in return, my Vladivostok decides to go flat broadside into him, and I guess at that point it was just a battle of who was going to reload first kind of thing to send the other guy packing. And of course, spoiler, the North Carolina does that. But as you can see that I'm already setting the fire. We're chaining fires one after another with constant HE spam on the ship. Obviously with the damage I took earlier on in the game from the Amalfi, my adrenaline rush is already working in my favor, putting my reload down from 8 seconds down to 7.4, which is quite nice. It's a little bit of a DPM bonus on my ship, and what you're going to notice that too. These ships, because they don't have a heal and they don't have a smoke screen, especially on the Irian, for example, you will take damage, so I think it's a no-brainer that taking adrenaline rush like as a skill, right? You have to take that skill to marginally increase the effectiveness of my ship's reload speeds and certain aspects of my vessel. To me, is just a no-brainer. I don't know why you wouldn't take the skill, in my opinion. So again, because you don't have a heal and because you're not stupid, you're going to take adrenaline rush. No-brainer. And again, it's going to be helping my ship in order to increase my DPM and dish out more damage in return. Now, again, in the background, I want you to keep in mind that this obviously RNGesus was on my side of this game. I was setting a lot of fires, and that's good because I want to show the example of that this ship is an absolute flame-throwing machine. On the contrary, if you are one of those players that want to give IFHE a go on this ship, just I guess keep in mind that, I guess theoretically speaking, you would do more damage per salvo and hit. You're just going to have a less likelihood of setting as many fires as I did this game. And spoiler alert, I am setting a lot of fires this game, guys. I'm talking about a metric fuck ton of fires this game. So again, I don't want to spoil anything, but just keep keep your eye on the clock counter, on the fire counter up in the top right corner, because it is going to be substantially going up and up and up. All right. Another thing about this ship that I want to talk about that I kind of breezed over and mentioned a little bit is the torpedo tubes. Obviously, the torpedo tubes, you have a launcher on each side. It is the Yu Yang torpedoes, and you get a torpedo reload booster to supplement your one launcher or your two launchers. So you can launch, you could torpedo reload booster and then launch another salvo of torpedoes, basically equivalent to that of a YY torpedo strike, right? 2 racks of 5. The only problem with the particular build that I am running is you can theoretically stealth torpedo, but you're probably not going to. Okay, I believe is my stealth 13.3, or no, with the commander build it's like 12 point whatever, 12.3, 2.5, something like that. I can't remember. You can't stealth torpedo in this thing, but it gives you less of a gap to have the eligibility to. I don't play this thing like how you would play your standard tech line Pan-Asian cruisers. That's not what this thing does. Obviously, if the smoke screen wasn't apparent enough, that you don't have one, missing there or lack thereof, you have to constantly keep moving. So this is more in line with standard light cruisers and how you play them, which I think is like what generally a lot of people want when they play cruiser, when they initially fall in love with cruisers, is kind of this sort of play style. And I think a lot of players will get a lot of good games and actually really like this ship a lot because it's kind of scratching that itch. You know, if you want an HE farming itch, if you want a HE spammers itch, if you want, every now and then, like your standard cruiser gameplay is what you're going to be getting out of this thing, and it does it very well. 12 guns of high explosive AP, whatever, it's 12 guns that reload in 8 seconds is very nice, and I think a lot of players that like their cruiser, and if you don't like it, if you're not a cruiser main, if you're a battleship main or a DD main or whatever, you're really going to appreciate the amount of firepower you have on this thing. 8 seconds, 12 guns, that equals a lot of DPM and a lot of shells going down range, which hopefully translates to a lot of fires set and a lot of damage in return for you. Another thing the ship does have is, thank God, it has ASW, so it has the airstrikes for submarines, so it can support your allied submarines, which is quite nice. It doesn't have the ship-based ASW that I believe the Pan-Asian light cruiser line has, if I'm not mistaken. So you do have that at your disposal. I guess you could support allied submarines a little bit better than you would be with the other ones. So you're not just solely reliant on your main battery guns to do the vast majority of the damage, or having to sail your massive vessel over the submarine, which is already going 25 knots underwater most likely, and have to drop your ASW that way, or your depth charges that way. So that is also quite nice. Again, I've talked about this multiple times on this channel, just because I don't deem or label or categorize this ship as an island humping HE spammer like an Atlanta, for example. It doesn't mean you can't make use and utilize island coverage to shoot over the top of it to basically get free damage. I mean, as long as you have spotters and you're not spotted in return and you're dishing out the pain all in one direction, that's a win for you, because that means I don't have to trade any HP in order to get this damage. This is all free damage that I'm able to accumulate based upon my allied spotting. Now, obviously, as you're seeing in the top corner of your screen, this is a 100% a loss. I don't think I have enough skill to salvage this game, so I'm just going to be shooting from afar here from this island, doing what I can. I mean, again, I still have the mindset that I'm going to win this game. I'm going to try to win this game, but again, it's looking more and more grim with each and every green vessel being foundered. Again, I think the other flank just utterly collapsed. My flank took way too long to get the job done. It's just one of those things, guys. It happens. I think also, the ships they had were just better suited for where they were in regards to the map. The C and B cap, like the Lenin, the Borodino. I think they had, again, Irian Analysis. Like a lot of things, they're just better, tankier battleships than what I had. Again, I don't know. I didn't sit here and watch the other end of the map. I'm only seeing the final result, which is that side got absolutely shit pumped and steamrolled. And now that inevitable fleet from the left side is going to, or right side is going to come over to my side and wipe out the remaining fleet. This is like the story of what happens in the in World of Warships. But I do want to keep in mind what happens here towards the late of the game when two cruisers think they're going to be able to beat the Irian. Just watch the amount of firepower that I have, especially with the high explosive 2, having 30 millimeters of HE penetration on things like the Yarsveld, on things like the Amalfi. As long as I angle my armor and rudder juke and turn with the double rudder shift mod, it becomes increasingly harder for these ships to land shells on me because I'm keeping them at range. If you keep ships at range with this thing, you can really win a lot of the engagements and outplay a lot of players with this particular build. So I highly recommend you guys try out this double rudder shift build, because I think it's going to translate not only to a more fun experience for you, but also if you potentially built your Irian wrong, it's going to allow you to dust her off and give it a fresh new look and realize that the ship is actually better than you once thought. Going into my final thoughts about the Irian, guys, I think the ship is awesome. I really do like this ship, and I really can't recommend her enough to you guys. Via be doubloons in the armory. If you are lucky enough to get her in the Neon Treasures loot crates, don't spend too much money now, or the Santa crates, I think it's a great pickup and a great addition to your fleet. I think it's going to be an excellent crew trainer for your Pan-Asian light cruisers. I do think that the Huanghe, or whatever, the ship I featured yesterday, the tier 6, is probably going to assimilate better and fit better for your Pan-Asian light cruiser line, like the Genon and whatnot, because those are, I don't know, I just get the vibe. It feels like a little bit better, a little bit more at home, maybe like corresponding skills would translate a bit better. But in regards of a one-off alone, the Irian can get the job done. And I really do like this ship for the amount of firepower it has. It doesn't have much team utility, but again, the package is fun, and it can dish out the team utility by setting a lot of fires and dealing with a lot of enemy ships by doing that constant ship damage over time, which can sway other engagements in the favor of your team. If I'm sitting there starting a lot of fires on enemy ships, influencing them to turn out to get all their guns to bearing while showing broadside to my allies, that's still a win for me, and that's the team utility that this thing brings, is by frustrating enemy players because of the spam of HE that's coming down range every 8 seconds. Obviously, with my adrenaline rush now, you can see how little HP I have. I'm down to 6.5 seconds, which is like translating this thing into kind of like the Pan-Asian / Soviet Cleveland, so to speak. Of course, not as good, but again, kind of similar, like the open water Cleveland, without the Raider, of course. That's again why I like this thing. I really am a sucker for light cruisers, and this thing really does scratch my itch when it comes to its overall play style and its effectiveness on the battlefield. And I really think that you guys would like this ship too. So again, that's why I wanted to showcase the ship. I don't think a lot of players have, I think a lot of reviews that are out there are older, and I think more or less people have kind of forgotten about this ship, but I don't want that. I want my audience to be aware of what this ship can do on the battlefield. And if you do happen to pick her up, I want you to be like, wow, Waffle, this actually is a very, very fun ship. I like this ship. And again, if I can persuade any of you players to or people to go ahead and pick up this ship and maybe play her again and have a good time, that is a win in my book, because that is what I'm here to do. That is what this channel is here to do, is kind of highlight the forgotten goodies instead of highlighting all these new shiny ships all the time that everyone wants to talk about and play. Sometimes going back to these older ships can really be a breath of fresh air and kind of reignite and revigor us to play this ship again, or play this game again, and have a little bit more fun. I think that's the thing, is a lot of us have it's become too routine, right? So I really do want to spread the word about the Irian especially. Again, and I'm going to be working my way down all these Pan-Asian ships in the Neon Treasure loot containers, because I think that there's a lot of goodies in here. Yes, there are some bad ships, and I'll make sure to highlight those too, but I wanted to start with not only the cruisers, because I am a cruiser main, but I wanted to highlight with a lot of the better ships too, that if you happen to, get this thing and you're like, what the fuck is an Irian? You realize, in my eyes, that you just scored, not the lottery, but you really just got lucky with a tier 8 premium ship, not only for the credit income and the crew training compatibility, but also the fun factor. I think there's a lot of fun to be had in this particular ship, and I think it is well worth your time and money spent. Going into the post-battle screen now. I think we are coming in with, what, 136,000 damage, which again isn't that good. Like, I'm sure you're going to be able to get better games than this. We were lucky enough to pick up the Kraken, an 18 fire set, by the way. So when I say this thing's a flamethrower, this thing is literally the Indonesian flamethrower. This ship is a lot of fun, guys, and I hope to God you give her a go again. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day, and peace out.